My name is Bill Wheeler. I am a resident of Lebanon, Missouri, and have been for many, many years. Missouri became a state in 1821, and this part of the state was really not settled until much later than that. Even the Indians, the Osage tribe, which most people are familiar with, didn't really use this as a permanent campground. They used it as a hunting area, and they would come here in the summer and they would hunt. There was elk and bear and of course deer and wild turkey, and then they would go back to Kansas, and it was shared by the Kickapoo and a lot of other tribes. So this part of Missouri was not settled until basically around the Civil War. Well, Lebanon got its name, came from Lebanon, Tennessee, and I guess they still had a passion for Lebanon, Tennessee, and they were some of the first settlers in the Lebanon area, and they wanted to name it Lebanon. The only other argument going on at the time, some wanted to name it Wyota, which was the name of the old Indian encampment, hunting encampment, and the Harrison family won out, and it was named after Lebanon, Tennessee. Well, the Bennett Spring area, it has been a state park way back in the 20s, and actually the property where the spring is was owned by the Bennett family. And if you remember, the author of the Bennett, the preacher who was here in town, that was some of his family. And it was, when the state bought it, they named it Bennett Spring, and it is singular. It's not plural. There's no S on it.
Just Bennett Spring.
Bennett Spring. They named it after the Bennett family. Well, it's one of the most popular fishing places in the state of Missouri. They have more fishing pressure there, and of course with the trout park there, the trout raising stream, they raise a lot of trout and send it to other parks all over the state. It is a very beautiful park. It is heavily used. I have even heard rumors that it is being overused, and possibly it'll be like Yellowstone, which is a federal park, that they will actually have to limit the number of people that can come in. Someone will have to leave before somebody else can come in. But I hope that doesn't happen, because it is a real asset to our community. Even though part of it is in Dallas County, we share that with Dallas County. It is a real benefit economically and tourism-wise to the city of Lebanon. Well, Route 66 has a long history through Laclede County. Of course, it's hard to say when Route 66 really started. The old road was built in the 1926, but you have to trace it all the way back to the old Indian trails that went through this country. And if you look at our county, all the way from here back through Rolla to St. Louis, there is an upland. There is a very high plateau, and the Indians use this, and probably the Indians use it because it was an old buffalo trail, and the Indians used it on going into the southwest. After that, the Butterfield stage used this route, and then after that, the Wire Road used the route when the railroad came through. And then for many years, it was just a dirt road, a wagon trail that was called Highway 14 by the state of Missouri. But in 1926, the federal government saw the need of having a nationwide road system, and that's where Route 66 got its start. Of course, the story is that the people along the route wanted the number 60, and 60 was already taken by the highway that goes through Seymour and south of here. So they settled at the Woodruff Building in Springfield one evening that, well, we can't have 60, so we'll call it 66. And 66 became a very popular name for our highway. Yeah, that is very true, and that's quite a story too. The original route, the engineers came in and looked at our country, starting from Rolla, actually, and you had to cross the Piney and the Little Piney and the Gasconade and the Rubidoux, and then the Gasconade again at Hazel Green. And the engineers said there's too many bridges to build, the country is too rough, we just can't build it through Pulaski, Laclede, and Webster County. So they said, no, it has to go south out of Rolla, and it would follow basically the same route into Springfield that Highway 60 follows today. But Lebanon, in its infinite wisdom, sent a delegation to Jefferson City. Even the high school band went, and they marched and they played for the legislators and the engineers, the Missouri Department of Transportation, and convinced them to take one more look at coming through our county. So down at Hazel Green, where the bridge is now, a delegation from Laclede County met the engineers down there, and they showed them a path up through the valley, up through across the river there at Hazel Green, and up through the valley at Bear Creek, and a way of getting into Lebanon that would not cost a lot of money. And they convinced the engineers that this was the best route. So consequently, we got Route 66, and we have I-44 today. Without Route 66, we would not have I-44 coming through our community. Lebanon has a wonderful history. Of course, the original town of Lebanon started in 1849, but before then, there was a Butterfield stagecoach stop out east of town, and I've done a lot of research on finding exactly where that old Butterfield stagecoach stop was. It was run by the Appling family, and it is on some of the old maps that are available, but it's very hard to pinpoint because there was no foundations back then or anything like that. But in 1849, when the first settlers came to the Lebanon area, they elected to be over in the east part of town. What we refer to now is the original Lebanon. Some people may remember it as what we call Old Town. Well, this was a rise in the topography. It was actually a hill. If you go down Harwood Street, you look up the hill to get to what is the original town. And they said that was the best place to put a town because the rest of it was too swampy, and there was diseases and what have you. So they put the town over there. It was on a square concept. It was a square with the business places all around the square. And then when the railroad came through, the Frisco Railroad asked the city of Lebanon if they would give them some property there in Old Town to put the depot on. And for some reason, the city fathers elected not to. I think it disappointed the Frisco Railroad, and they said, well, if you won't give us room for the property, we'll just move the railroad a mile away from your town. And they did. They moved the railroad over to where it is now, and they said in a few years the town will grow around the railroad, and it did, and that's the reason we have Commercial Street where it is. And that's another reason why Lebanon is, if you look at it on a map, some of the streets run north and south, and some run with the railroad. So we have no consistency on our street because of that move, and that was in 1868. Lebanon was one of the major stops on the old Frisco Railroad. During Civil War, the railroad stopped at Rolla, and then it came on to Lebanon in 1868.